Good afternoon. My name is Priscilla Flores, and thank you for joining our session today, Learning Together, a community approach to early literacy. So if your goal for this session was to hear from the experts in early literacy, then you're in the right place. You are in the correct breakout room. So as we move into our session, I would kindly ask that you remain muted for this time. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat, and we will certainly address them at the end of our session. Also, since we're in a breakout, we are unable to utilize the spotlight feature. So please feel free to pin the identified speakers. And if you have not already done so, please rename your video with your name and organization. Would kindly ask that you would pin myself, Priscilla Flores, Karisma Tamez, who's the K-12 project coordinator, the United Way for Greater Austin, Jaclynne Bizzell, instructional coach at Jarrell ISD, Monica Salas-Truhill, principal at Hemphill Elementary, Hayes Consolidated ISD, and Jennifer Hanna, principal at Tom Green Elementary at Hayes Consolidated ISD as well. So our goals for today include having the opportunity to identify the building blocks of early literacy development, and also provide a time for us to explore how to nurture and gain these early literacy skills that we all know are so critical and lay the foundation for student success. We'll also learn and discuss the strategies used to support literacy in and out of school with the vision of building a comprehensive literacy community. And finally, we will discuss the E3 literacy framework development and implementation, which we have used to highlight best practices and lessons learned. So we have to ask ourselves, how did this begin? We didn't just wake up and decide that we wanted to focus on early literacy, although I really wish we did. But what I believe was the kickstart for our state, putting aside the data and the emphasis and the research that we all are, very full aware of, it all began with HB3, which we all know was a sweeping and historic school finance bill that was passed by the 86th Texas legislature in 2019. So first and foremost, it looked at supporting teachers and it rewards teacher excellence. It focuses on learning and improving student outcomes. It ensures equitable and increased funding. And it reduces and reforms property taxes and recapture. But I think overall for this session, we will look at how it increased the supports in K-3 literacy through literacy academies and placing effective teachers in K-2 classrooms. So what we do know is that children not reading proficiently by the end of third grade drop out at a rate 4 times greater than proficient readers. We know that, we've experienced it. We've seen the data not only in Central Texas, not only in statewide, but nationally as well. So with that, HB3 brought with it full day pre-K funding for eligible students. It allowed districts to set 5-year goals that were disaggregated by race and income for third grade reading and math, and provides an opportunity for them to share their progress annually. Provides optional funding to extend the school year by 30 days to reduce that summer slide for all pre-K and 5th grade students. Also increase the dual language funding to incentivize implementation of a best practice and reduce classroom segregation. Of course, one of mine that hits close to home provides funding to support students with dyslexia. And again, it increased supports in K-3 literacy through the academies and really looking at the teachers that we were placing in those classrooms with the emphasis of literacy. So what do we have to support our thoughts? And what do we have to support our practices? So in other words, why is it that we're going back and actually looking at the data that we are looking at right in front of us? So what I have here are the Central Texas children who are entering kindergarten school ready, identified by the Readiness domain for the 2019-2020 year. So we look at mathematics. 80% of our children are entering kindergarten ready in the area of mathematics. But then look at the emerging literacy, the language and communication, and the social emotional readiness domains. There is still growth to be seen, and it is instrumental and critical that we address not one, not two, but each of these domains cohesively and comprehensively. So now we're looking at the kindergarten readiness status predictor. This is only showing us a visual of what we've already known and what we've heard. The odds of passing the third grade STAR when we're looking at math and reading. Students who enter kindergarten ready are more than 4 times, the odds are greater by more than 4 times of passing the third grade STAR. In math, we're at 5. The non-low income, significantly lower. Then we look at our English language learner. There's a gap. So then we go to, how do we address that gap? How do we address this area, right? How do we ensure that we are providing an equal opportunity for all of our students to be successful? And as a parent, as an educator, as a practitioner, I do firmly believe that it should be a goal of the community, not only of the educators in our school system, in our households. It is a comprehensive task that we all must work at. Which leads to, let's break this down by income. These are the rates of the kindergarten readiness by income that we have. So we'll look on the left side. It's the percentage of the kindergartners who are ready. Look at the vast difference between those who come from a non-low income household and those who come from a low income household. That is an enormous gap. How do we address that? And what we've seen, or what we can see here, is that the gap is pretty consistent. Those who come from non-low income households remain at that high 60, though it's dropped to the 50s, but then it raises up. But those children who come from low income households, their rate remains at the 30s, the 40s, and then we see a decline from last year. So we know that income, race plays a role in the education of students, or the post-secondary success of all students. But then do we also realize that it also leads to high discipline rates? So what I've provided for you here are the discipline referral rates only for our Central Texas area. And we can take a look. They're quite alarming if we look at the 16-way split, we can look at those that come from the non-low income households and those that come from the low income households. So this is without providing equal opportunities for each of our students. Ultimately, this is what happens, right? This is the consequence of that, or can be one of the consequences. So how do we attack this? How do we make sure that our kiddos who are coming in, that they are not reflected on this slide? We do it by looking at the early predictors of student success and really honing in on those, on literacy, analytical thinking, and verbal development. But most importantly, I think we do it as a community. We look to those around us. We look for additional resources to help us fill our children and our students, our scholars, with the opportunities for success in early literacy. One of the best statements that I read, I pulled from The Most Important Predictor of a Child's Academic Success by John Washington. And he said, having a book-filled home is a statistically significant factor in predicting how well a child will perform later in school. So we know that. And again, it leads us to our overall topic for this session, learning together and building a community of literacy proficient scholars. And with that, the first step is building a community supporting literacy for all. And our best example from this is that we have right now in Central Texas. We have Karisma Tamez from the Greater Austin Reading Coalition, from the United Way for Greater Austin. And she is going to share with us for the next several minutes about the work that this reading coalition has undertaken and how they are bringing literacy back to the community.
Hi, Priscilla. Thank you. I'm excited to be here from United Way or Greater Austin. I just want to make sure, I know we kind of ran behind. I'm going to time myself 15 minutes. Is that okay? Or would you like less?
Perfect.
15? Okay. Don't want to go over. Hi, welcome everyone. I'm so happy that you're here. I actually recognize some of the names. Mary Ellen Isaacs, you're one of our partners. Amy Hagan, you're one of our partners as well. Helen, Austin ISD, welcome. And Bertha, David Bryant, I haven't met you yet, but would like to connect. And I'm going to share with you a new reading coalition that has been funded by the Susan and Dell Foundation, which United Way has received the grant for. And that is supported through our coalition partners. So their funding really supports the backbone functions of the coalition work, and a la Success by Six, which many of you probably have been involved in our Success by Six initiatives. Those are the 0 through 6 initiatives. And so this next one that we've received the grant funding for will be focused primarily on grades K through 12. And the first segment of that is the kinder through third space. So we're kind of picking up where Success by Six takes off. And our ultimate goal, we are well aware of the problems. You know, we've spent most of the morning looking at the data. So we know the problems, and we're really solution oriented at this point, trying to reduce disparities in our student outcomes, create a positive reading culture empowered by our community partners, as well as businesses. So I'll get more in detail about that later, and promoting a child's right to read. We've done some amazing work in our coalition so far. We're a couple of months in. You know, we formally kicked off in January, and our last meeting was in May. And something that I would like to say is we are going to be seeking additional funding as our initiative progresses. And we're trying to model this Greater Austin Reading Coalition after a very successful model that's in existence, and it's called Philadelphia's Reading Promise, or Read by Fourth. And I can post a video of that in the chat for you. For those who don't know about it, it was wonderful doing research about it. We have some connections with them, and we're really trying to get the wheel going, because why reinvent it if it's already working? And so over the past couple of months, we started from the ground up, from scratch, with our partners, getting people that have already been involved in the early childhood education reading space. Some of them are from Success by Six, and others will be pulling in along the way. And our main ask in the beginning, I'll focus, we can leave it on this slide for right now, but this slide is a culmination of several months of work of our partners coming together, having Jamboard sessions, and asking initially, what would it look like if we had a wildly successful early grade reading community campaign? And what would our potential challenges be? And taking into account each of the stakeholders that we want to involve in the future of our work, which, it was stated before in the previous session before the break, parents are a big piece of that. The sharing of information, parental involvement, neighborhood businesses, childcare programs, school campuses, including Austin ISD. We're also looking to partner, with other ISDs such as Jarrell, because we have someone in our parent committee who is looking to include, who we're looking to include and expand. And, the Greater Austin bounds includes zip codes as far as Georgetown and to Buda. And I can post a link in that as well. But right now, the planning model that we used was results-based accountability. We really took an inventory of what are the research-based best practices that we have out there in existence that are backed by data, and what are a list of community assets that we have already in existence. And we asked our partners to prioritize these strategies in the meeting from last, which was in February. And the strategies that we have are 4 pillars right now. They're really focused on this dartboard model on the right-hand side. And you see parent engagement, community culture, high intensity tutoring, and out of school time learning. All of these are proven research-based practices to really improve reading outcomes in our children. And I really want to bring up something that I didn't include in our slide deck, but I'm just going to mention it because our partners took the time to really have a vision of and have values behind the vision. So the vision that we had as a result of our Jamboard session was separated into families, schools, as a coalition, as a community, and for our children, which is essentially the dartboard on the right-hand side. We call it the dartboard, but it's not. It's inclusive. It's collaborative. There's a lot of connection that we see there. And the values that our coalition have come up with for our Greater Austin community, which we'll be abiding by for our vision, will be collaborative, transparent, accountable, inclusive, creative, and aware. We're really trying to have a community coalition that is effective and based out of these values, which we found kind of to be inherent in the Austin culture as well. If we could just focus on the slide before really quickly, I kind of want to talk a little bit more about it. The collaboration with others in our community and our organizations, the similar goals to create a more equitable future. The biggest thing that really came up as a result of these sessions was we would like a place for all of the children involved to feel as if they're reading about children who look like them. So the inclusivity of that is having books that are more aligned, that are more racially diverse. And so we have partnered with Bookspring and have a generous donation of about 40,000 books that we are going to be distributing in the next couple of months for our partners to determine the best way that they'd like to distribute that. And a big part of that is being creative in the ways that they'd wish to see that out in the community. We'd like to include businesses. You know, we're thinking if the Philadelphia model is really kind of based on boots on the ground, grassroots businesses, barbershops, grocery stores, anyone that we can get involved where they can have like a book nook or spread the word about early childhood literacy, you know, incentivize campaigns. We're really trying to push and promote, you know, local venues to make it more accessible for children in the community to have the resources that they need in order to achieve those reading outcomes. And a lot of the creativity behind that also involves our partners connecting with each other. So many of our partners, I'll give you an example, Austin Batcave has this really novel way of making books accessible and convenient for their community. They have 2 buses, and it's a mobile library. So the bus can go to different neighborhoods in the Austin area and, you know, kind of be like the ice cream truck, but for books. And the children are able to have ways that they can just go to a place and, you know, receive books. And so there's been connections made already within our coalition group that, you know, networking connections that are really trying to pair up the partners and see where they can help each other and make things more accessible and then apply for grants again in the future. I think we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. Right now, you know, we're really trying to get more partners involved. We have a data committee and a policy committee that are off the ground. And we also have a parent committee, which is going to be kind of the nucleus for what's going on. We really want to amplify the parent voices and have them included in all of our work because they're the children's first teacher, you know, as it was said. They're such an influential part in a child's life and development. And we really want to make sure that the parents have the resources that they need in their communities and also in their schools, you know, which, you know, schools are a part of their communities. And one of the partnerships that we formed with Austin ISD is actually the Families as Partners program, which we're kind of looking to connect, we are looking to connect them in the greater Austin community. So we're trying to see how we can have the Families as Partners reach the funding that they need so that they can amplify their efforts within the greater Austin community. And like I stated before, we do have parents that live in Jarrell and they're really concerned with how can my child know at out of school time receive the services that they need, you know, like how can they be more in the know essentially and be more connected with the greater Austin area with Austin. So that's it's just started. Our parent committee started a couple weeks ago and it's going to get kicked off formally tomorrow. And we're looking forward to really see how we can connect our families and, you know, get them more involved with their schools too. And the Families as Partners program is a really excellent program within the Austin ISD. Maria Rosas, who's a part of that, really has done a great job at making sure that the parents are involved in supporting the teachers. It's kind of like a two-way street, supporting teachers and also supporting the parents within their children's schools. So it's a great resource to start off from and to further their efforts. We have some parents in our parent committee currently who are also part of the Families as Partners program. So we're getting kind of like a cross-pollination of best practices, which is really the ultimate goal. You know, we're looking at the best practices that are in existence and building on them from there. And so in any way that you'd like to support our coalition going forward in terms of connections of people, organizations, nonprofits, especially, you know, the 501c3 status recipients are the ones who receive the grants and can apply for funding. But so far our coalition efforts, you know, we do have people who are private business owners too. They'll just, in the future, we plan to model it after the Read by Fourth in Philadelphia, which has different working groups, separating the businesses, organizations, and any kind of private person who'd like to be involved with an independent organization or business. So, please feel free to reach out. I have put the director's contact information on the upper right-hand corner of the slide. Her name is Michelle, and I work alongside her, along with another project. But we are really excited to get this off the ground and begin marketing and start to implement the strategies that we have focused on right now. And the first one that is our highest priority is distributing books, having book drives and special events in our community. That's the first one that our coalition voted on, they voted on it in the last meeting. So it's very democratically run. And if you have any other questions, I'll put my email in the chat as well. And any donations that you might have, any connections, feel free to message me. Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing all this information with us, Karisma. And again, if you'd put your contact information in the chat, sure, we would certainly appreciate it. So break time. So we had already built in, I know we got started a little bit late, but since we had already built in a break time, I'm going to keep to that. So I would ask you to stop your video, take about 4 to 5 minutes, take a deep breath, get up and stretch, and we will come back at 12:58. Okay, we'll be back on in about 1 minute. Okay, welcome back, everyone. We can resume our videos and we can move forward to the next segment. So it's interesting, during the break, I learned a little bit more about the disconnect. Again, that my children have no idea about what I do, because I just overheard my little one telling her friend over FaceTime that she needed to use her quiet voice because her mommy was teaching people how to read. So from the mouth of babes. So not exactly teaching to read, but I hope that as an organization, as a panel, that we are able to once again shed light onto the importance of literacy. So with looking at the need for stronger frameworks, stronger systems, and not necessarily on the practices of teaching early literacy, but in really looking at the needs of how do we, because at E3 we have to measure everything. So how do we measure the structures that are currently in place without necessarily measuring the student, right? But really looking at the structure and the system. So thus, with an amazing group of experts, we developed the E3 literacy framework. And all of this was based on the regional needs. It started about a year ago, oh my goodness, maybe a year and a half ago, that we shared some information, we shared some data with our regional superintendents. We come together with them every other month. There are 15 districts who we partner with. So each of these 15 superintendents were present, and we began to share the cumulative data of the third grade reading pass rates of students from low-income households by campus. And the disparities really showed us that there were not only differences in the teacher preparation, but through the campus support systems and the leadership. And we took us back to that is what the data actually showed us, that many campuses with the same student percentage experienced very different passing rates. So then again, we have to look at our structure and our systems and how are we supporting these students. So this data, these facts and conversations, we realized that there was a demand for a cohesive whole literacy framework for districts and campuses that supported the components of instructional leadership, teacher effectiveness, community engagement, and school climate. And what we've learned, or seen through the process, is that literacy is not in its individual silo. It is a community need, it's a regional need, but it's something that we can all work through together, and looking at the different pieces. It's not just that one teacher in the classroom with these students. It has to be a comprehensive approach. And that is what our ultimate goal was in looking at our needs in developing this framework. So with our commitment, again, I'm sure you all know Susan Dawson, once she says we're doing something, we are absolutely doing it. So we were going to tackle this need. We recognize the need to think more broadly of what constitutes a successful foundation for strong literacy. Again, not only looking at teacher training, but also campus systems and what they were using to support literacy. So we did what any amazing group would do. We convened our think tank. We convened literacy experts from both regional district partners and external partners, and those partners are with us today. So they'll be able to speak firsthand on the development of this framework. So through their work and through the aggressive timeline with these experts, we were able to launch a literacy framework that represents our groundbreaking opportunity to develop and implement, again, a truly holistic, multicultural, academically prepared literacy tool for all schools and all student populations. And again, because we understand that it is a necessary step to ensure a competitive Central Texas workforce for the 21st global economy. And looking at the framework, I think we'll be sharing it with you in the chat as well, so you'll have your copy. We looked at we identified the three module areas. We're looking at leadership, instructional framework, and the standards-focused instruction. The indicators for leadership include criteria such as developing plans for professional learning, leading and maintaining a multi-tiered approach to differentiating literacy instruction. Again, always looking at that assessment data, and of course, connecting families and communities, implementing a coaching model, guiding instructional improvement efforts, and establishing systems for reporting and accountability. Yes, it's a lot, and it can be done because, again, on this panel, we have two principals who implemented the framework this year, and they will be speaking to that. Then we also looked at the instructional framework, again, on multi-tiered supports to ensure that the system results in all students meeting grade level expectations or beyond in reading. For standards focused, we targeted the key elements of effective literacy instruction that are relative to the standards and on the need for evidence-based reading and writing instruction, vocabulary development, and disciplinary literacy. So after the development of the framework, we looked for some brave souls who would implement this framework. And I'm telling you, I think it really helped that those who developed it believed in it because they knew what was in it. And so they wanted to roll it out on their campuses as well. So we rolled out in September, through the months of September, October of this year, of 2020. We invited 5 elementary campuses to implement this framework. Trainings were intensive. They received 3 separate trainings, one on each of the modules. And then of course, we followed up with some one-on-one instructional coaching for each of the administrators and their teams. All of this took place between January and May. And yes, those dates are correct. And in a year of COVID, in a year of trauma, can I just say hats off to these administrators who rolled this out, and I'm so excited to hear their perspectives on the implementation. So moving forward, what we hope to do in this upcoming school year is, again, roll this out to another 5 to 7 elementary schools within our region. But we will be doing it in a twofold cohort. The first cohort will remain, because although the professional learning has been completed on each of the modules, we are looking to carry that forward into a professional learning network, right? That way it's continuous. There's continuous improvement. We're really able to discuss best practices. So we will be bringing those 5 literacy teams from each of those campuses together quarterly to discuss and to look at multiple topics regarding literacy. At the same time, we will be picking up those additional campuses to follow through our cohort 2. So they will again receive the professional learning sessions, the individualized coaching, the ongoing support, with an opportunity to provide meaningful feedback on the framework and the professional learning systems as well. So our ultimate goal is that both groups will work simultaneously and cohesively together and learn from each other. And now for our panel. Let me move this. I am so excited to introduce to you our Literacy Educator panel. First, we have Jaclynne Bizzell, who is an instructional coach. She is in her 15th year as an educator and has worked in both Leander and Jarrell ISD. Her motto, her mantra for literacy is, how long a child's learning journey depends directly on how well their literacy path is paved. So we have Hanna. She's just completed her 3rd year as principal of Tom Green Elementary in Hayes. She is in her 24th year in education. We have some experts with us. She has served as a teacher, instructional coach, assistant principal, and principal over these past 24 years in the Austin area. Her mantra is, literacy opens doors to endless possibilities. It takes you to places near and far and sets the foundation for learning. And we have Dr. Monica Salas-Truhill. She is currently a bilingual principal at Hayes CISD at Hemphill Elementary. She has been in education 13 years, serving communities in early childhood through 12th grade in the Central Texas area. She strongly believes in building the foundation of literacy in the early stages of a student's education will ensure their success both academically and social emotionally. And then again, we also have with us Karisma Tamez, who is the K-12 project coordinator for the Greater Austin Reading Coalition. And then again, we all understand her mantra, which she so graciously shared with us through her presentation, that literacy is a community-based job, task, and it is our due diligence. Thank you all for joining us today. I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing so we can see. And again, all righty, let me move you. Hold on a moment. There we go. That's what I needed. Okay. And again, just wanted to remind our participants, if you would pin Jennifer, Jaclynne, Karisma, and Monica, that way they will show up on your screen as they speak. So the first question that I have is for all panel members. And this question really focuses on the development of our framework. So Jennifer, if you would answer, and I'm sorry, Jaclynne, if you would answer first, if you would please share your experience in developing the framework, and of the process, what did you find to be the most beneficial? And then also, of course, what did you find to be the most challenging?
Okay, thank you. Last summer, when I was asked to serve as to work on the framework, it came at perfect timing with all the reading academies coming out and the all the new teaks, and so I was very excited. And I think one of the most beneficial things from serving on the framework committee was just getting together with all like-minded people who really had a passion for literacy and being able to collaborate and talk about what does successful literacy look like on a campus and what do we need to have in place to make sure that that foundation in early literacy is really implemented successfully on a campus. As far as challenges, like you said, we were on an aggressive timeline. And when you put everyone together in one room or in one Zoom meeting about literacy, I think we could have talked forever. So I would say that was probably the most challenging part in the creation of the rubric. But overall, it was just really insightful.
Great. Thank you. And Jennifer, if you would answer the same, if you would just tell us a little bit about your experience in the development process.
Yes, of course. Thank you. Like Jaclynne had mentioned, it took place last summer, and one of the tasks that we had is we received each portion of the rubric prior to our meeting, and we had to write about what we agreed with and what we disagreed in regards to the rubric. And that was kind of our pre-work in preparation for the meetings. The part I felt most valuable was, like Jaclynne also, was getting to work with a diverse group of leaders. Everyone brought different experiences and perspectives to the discussion. For me, the challenge, yes, it was fast paced. Also, we get in our comfort zone working with people we're familiar with. So just that initial piece of being in the breakout room with educators that we didn't know, just once we got past that barrier, it was great to then hear about everybody's experience and perspective and what was working for them in literacy on their campuses.
Thank you. Monica.
Hi, yes. So I think overall, when we were looking at the framework, it was a lot of gray pieces within the framework. So I think one of the most rewarding things that we got out of it is we really got to dissect it more and really talk about what is it actually asking us to do and what's actually feasible within our campuses to do. Because sometimes when we encounter different frameworks, we're experiencing this is great research and this is great on paper, but how is it actually going to be implemented within campuses? And so really bringing that conversation to the forefront of how can we actually implement this? I think that was the most rewarding part, especially as Ms. Hanna just shared, we did get to provide that feedback. And so we did take that feedback from every member who participated and then utilize that to make those adjustments. So it was really taking out the gray out of what we were experiencing as administrators or district leaders. I think the most challenging for me when I was looking at the framework is I already start processing all the things that are within the framework. And then it became a little overwhelming, like, oh my gosh, I have to work on this. Oh my gosh, I have to work on that. And so that was also getting that feedback or working and collaborating with other members of the committee is we were able to bounce that of, this sounds very overwhelming. So how can we take it piece by piece? And I feel like that was one of the challenging areas is wanting to do it all and knowing we still have a lot more things that we can work on and grow in, but realizing there's great things that we already have in place. And so I think it was both a challenge, but also something of letting us know where we're going next.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to move on to the next question because it does address families and communities, and I think it's a great way to have each of our panelists provide a response. So when we looked at the framework, focus area number 1 is on leadership, and the framework identifies connecting families and communities with the resources and tools needed to catapult literacy to the forefront. Can you share how you are working specifically on this module in moving this work forward? how are you partnering with your community, or are you still searching for resources? How can we bring that together? And Jaclynne, if you'll go first.
Yes. We are still in little old Jarrell, we are still working with trying to find resources and ways to really get into the community. This past year, though, we did start a literacy leader cohort where we gathered a group of teachers who are just as passionate about literacy and coming up with some goals and revisiting our mission statement of literacy and our vision for literacy within the district. And we also talked about, they started generating ideas about having over COVID, we would have read alouds where parents and students could sign on and they could still hear those read alouds even though we weren't on campus. We've also done things like incorporate a summer reading program with our library. So we're doing that where we have guest speakers come in and the kids can still come up over the summer and check out books and listen to guest speakers read and create crafts and do little activities. And so we're still kind of in that very beginning stage. We have a lot of change in our district right now, but I'm very excited about actually getting this framework into our new admin's hands and taking those next steps.
Thank you, Jaclynne. What I found amazing was that you said little old Jarrell, but you guys sure are doing some big things.
Thank you.
Really
We're
are.
We're trying to keep up with all the growth.
Yes, I know. Jennifer, you'd share.
Yes, of course. One of the very first things we did when we evaluated the leadership portion of the framework is we found a lot of those categories we were emerging. So it did feel in that very first section. So it did feel like Monica had said, like we have a lot of work to do and to get our focus area. So this past spring, our first task was we surveyed the teachers. We wanted to know what did they see in the classroom as the gaps in literacy and what supports would benefit them as educators. To improve their literacy instruction to help close those gaps that they're seeing with their students. It was really, the survey, and it was really short and simple, but it gave us 2 clear focus areas. And so it kind of helped narrow down that overwhelming feeling when you look at it. We have formed a literacy leadership team and we've met recently, and our goal to start the school year off next year is to expand this to our parents. We want to get their feedback on their child's literacy development. What training would they like? So when I have the principal coffee chats or we have parent events, what would benefit them as a family to help improve their child's literacy? So we're going to do that and get some feedback. We also have talks and plans of, hopefully we'll be able to have more on-campus events. We did do a couple of virtual events last year, but we want to bring more on campus so we can bring in guest readers from the community and have our community partners participate in our campus-wide literacy effort.
Thank you. Monica, if you'd share.
Yes. So as schools, I serve a very high needs Title I campus. And so for our school, we very much focus on what is it that our community is needing and not just being a steward of information, but a steward of resources for our families. And so along with what Ms. Hanna shared is we also surveyed our teachers to see what is it that teachers are noticing as a struggle. But we also looked at what are those community partnerships that we already have. And so PTA is a great organization, right? And so what we did was we partnered with PTA this year, and it was an event that we did towards the end of the year of PTA purchased library or literacy books for each one of our students. So all K through fifth grade student, pre-K through fifth grade, took home a book buddy and a literacy book that teachers got to pick the book that they were interested in. And then we created a literacy activity around that. So even though it was a Zoom session, our teachers were still coaching their parents on here's how you can better support their student. We also, I think Ms. Tamez mentioned it earlier, the Book Springs is a great organization that we've also partnered with as well. And so they actually donated a lot of books. And so what we did is we actually did a summer reading program this year. And so our students were able to get 2 to 3 books from the donation that was provided to our campus. And so they're going home and reading those books over the summer. And we kind of did a little reading challenge to get them into still continuing that literacy, even though when they're not here with us. We also used our CIS. We do have community and schools on our campus. And so using that resource as well, they now are currently doing pop-up literacy libraries in our neighborhoods where they serve the majority of our students. And so really it was analyzing our resources that we currently have, what are their partnerships that we already have, and how can we streamline that to focus on literacy if that is what we're saying on as a campus that we want to focus on more. There are some areas that we're still looking at improving for next year, especially what Ms. Hanna just shared. I do principal chats at the beginning in the fall semester. And so getting that feedback from our parents of what are they interested in learning more about literacy focused, so that when we do those chats, we can also do a quick 5-10 minute tip on here's how you can support your student. And so for us, we took it as an approach of analyzing what we have, looking at our resources, and then making adjustments from our current resources.
Thank you. And Karisma, if you could speak a little bit to the work that, any additional work that you guys are doing in moving this forward and really bringing a community approach to literacy.
Sure. So yeah, United Way has been involved, since its inception with really trying to bring more awareness for literacy and to receive social support services in our community. Success by Six does a really good job of this in the early childhood years. And for right now, the Greater Austin Reading Coalition is really focused on outlining our partner roles and responsibilities, because we're outward facing, whereas schools are more inward facing, but you're still expected to provide support to the families, right? So we kind of are trying to support the schools in this endeavor while also amplifying the resources that are already available through organizations that are doing similar works, and really connect the dots in terms of that. And so as a collective, our partners are working on three core conditions that are essential to achieving the success visioning goals that we had surrounding our community, families, and school systems. And one of them is, the first one is families understand the power to help children with reading. And that community, the second one is communities and neighborhoods are literacy rich. And then the third one is ensuring that our systems, such as the schools and out of school time services like the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club, any healthcare organizations. We also realize, medical systems are a source of information too. And so really providing literacy rich environments in places that you wouldn't think, but are so crucial to where our families need to turn to, making sure that they're fairly resourced and equitably designed. So the responsibilities, and I'll just talk quickly about this, we're trying to ensure that we have partners that are really actively involved and engaged in proactively seeking opportunities to align their efforts with the goals and strategies of our coalition, while also mitigating the barriers that exist in our community that are organizational, access to to technology, anything that's inclusion related. We want to make sure that all children have equal opportunity, even those with disabilities, cultural, racial, socio-economic impediments and barriers. We want to make sure that parental support and community support are we want to make sure that parental support is involved with our mission and community support. So it's really, at this moment in time, we're just connecting the pieces, we're connecting the dots, and then we're trying to build outward and base it on models that have already existed in the country.
Thank you, Karisma. And we've got a quick question that I think we have a little bit of time for. We have 3 minutes before they close our session. But Derek has asked if there's anything that you guys are specifically doing to engage fathers and mothers regarding the importance of early literacy.
Yeah, that's a great question. Some of our organizations, and I'll throw out 100 Black Men of Austin. Carl Spencer, he does really good work and is amazing with engaging families of different socio-economic status and racial backgrounds. So that's one aspect that we have, and then we also have the parent committee, which has just been formed. And so that one is really focused on getting the parents that are already involved with the work through Families as Partners in like Austin ISD, other parents that have been involved with our work in the past, and even just, people that we've kind of been passed along information with in different school districts. We're really trying to have them at the table and connected with our different organizations that are currently our partners that can apply for the grant funding, so that they can collaborate together and focus specifically on that. So that's a really great question.
Well, in the essence of time, we started late, but we were still able to wrap up just with enough time. Unfortunately, we didn't have time to go through all of our questions. But again, I would like to invite you, if you have any questions, or if you'd like to reach out to any of the panelists, please let me know, and I can always forward on their information to you. And again, here are our experts who really guided E3 through the development and the implementation of our framework. And then also just building that community piece, which we know is just so imperative in moving our student successes forward. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm always going to end with a quote, and it's always a doozy. It's almost like children, right? We have to be careful with what they say. That's almost my mantra here. So my quote for today was stated by the great Cesar Chavez. And he said, "Once social change begins, it cannot be reversed. You cannot uneducate the person who has learned to read. You cannot humiliate the person who feels pride. And you cannot oppress the people who are not afraid anymore." And that, colleagues, is something to live by. And it's something that we must continue to hone in on and to share with our children, who we see in the classroom, in the neighborhoods, at the parks, anywhere that we see them. That is what we need to hone in on. That with an education, that is the one thing that can never be taken from us. Thank you all for joining us today. And again, anything, please reach out, and I will share the panelist contact information with you as your request. Thank you so much, and have an awesome rest of the day.